Good morning to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, online viewers, radio listeners via St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM and other radio stations. I'm Rolika Roach and welcome to the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, July 18th, 2018. At this time, I invite the Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport and Telecommunication, the Honorable Stuart Johnson, to address you. Minister Johnson.
Allow me to first of all give an appreciation note to those that attended on Sunday morning the Provisional Rotary Sunset Club of St. Martin that attended the Soccer Garden cleanup. Though I did not go as minister in charge of TIAT, I went as a potential member of the organization to clean up one of the many districts in our country that needs to be cleaned up. My first days in office, it was evident that I made the initial statement of having this destination cleaned up as priority number one. I maintain that same opinion that we need to clean up our destination, we need to focus on our tourism product, and we need to ensure that we, in unison with our counterparts on French St. Martin, continue to do so collectively as a nation. So again, I'm calling on the people of St. Martin to support any initiatives to clean up our island, to take pride within your own home environment, to take pride within our districts, and together let us clean up St. Martin so we can, once we are fully ready, get St. Martin back up and running in a clean and very hospitable manner. On the backdrop of that, I would like to also announce that yesterday, July the 17th, I met with my counterpart, Ms. Valerie Demassieu, the Vice President and President of the Tourism Office on the French side, with the MOU that was signed by my predecessor, former minister, acting minister of TIAT, Mr. Miguel Duiva. More text, more detail is being, Mr. Cornelius Duiva, in regards to the MOU that is being signed. More body is coming into it. For instance, the synchronization of the travel of my person and Ms. Valerie Demassieu, the joint travel of the tourist offices of French St. Martin and Dutch St. Martin, respectfully. In addition to that, we'll be going on August the 9th on an island tour to be able to see firsthand what tourists experience on our island and to be able to speak directly to key stakeholders, allowing us and them to know what we have to improve upon in our tourism product. In addition to that, the MOU is going to be further explored by looking at joint trade shows that we'll be attending together. And besides that, the MOU continues to get more dialogue and text to it as we develop a tourism master plan going forward. Those are the reasons why the MOU in my first days in office was important, that I met with my counterpart, Ms. Valerie Demassieu, in regards to it, and me continuing it, but continuing it with more detail and providing more substance to what was already established. So indeed, I will be continuing with the MOU that was established, and together we will work on the points as highlighted in the MOU initially and bring more context to it. Besides that, on August the 4th was slated to be a hurricane preparedness forum. And when the advice hit my desk, my initial reaction was one, when I look around our country, when I open my door and I walk around just in my district, and I drive through every neighborhood in St. Martin, the devastation and the reality is still there. Homes without roofs, districts still not up to par, schools still not optimally up and running. So for me, as minister in charge of TIAT, and the budget being presented to me for approximately 50,000 guilders to organize a forum did not meet my approval, as I believe the cost for organizing such a forum should be offset by those vendors and those businesses that would benefit from the business derived from such a forum. For instance, we all know nowadays the hardware stores are doing exceptionally well, the insurance companies that are doing exceptionally well. So for me, the offset in any cost for that forum should be on the vendors themselves. And it's known practice that with any trade show, any car show, banks and otherwise also contribute to the joint marketing of any event, as well as the promotion and buy-in to such an event. So for me, and it's been done at the airport, it's done in the past, those type of events have been offset by the cost, but vendors would have to pay for. The last update I would like to provide, of course, is that this afternoon I'll be visiting the airport. The main highlight of the airport visit is to highlight and bring some attention into what is going to be the next temporary phase into the airport, the next temporary location. The need for that, of course, as Minister in charge of TIAT, is being very concerned with the situation that happened, and I saw on social media with passengers having to wait in long lines. That surely grabbed my attention, and I will be definitely addressing that with the airport management once I arrive there this afternoon around 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. In addition to that, on the weekend, I met with a few of the taxi dispatchers. The reason for that, of course, was them reaching out to me through social media. And I felt that indeed, as I continue to meet with every stakeholder, only approximately 3 weeks in office, that they need to know that this minister in charge of TIAT will continue to reach out to them, continue in the introductory meetings, and continue to get first-hand information in regards to some of the issues and ails that are addressing and need to be addressed with them together. So at this time now, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and if there's any questions from the media, I look forward to answering such.
Thank you, Minister Johnson, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Perry Hearlings, to address you. Minister Hearlings.
I have a couple of brief messages, but first of all, I would like to clarify an article that was published in the Daily Herald quoting some of my visions. And I'm kind of worried that it might cause some confusion in society. The article was about the fact that I supposedly was busy requesting an extension to submit the 2019 budget. What I said in the meeting with my ministry is that the policy, my aim was for the 2019 budget to be a realistic one, and to be able to produce a realistic budget, I will need some additional time. And that's all I've said. And definitely, and then this morning I tried to explain it further in the newspaper, but still it was kind of confusing to myself as well. The deadline of December 15th is the deadline that I'm looking at, but I need more time, and that's it. Country St. Martin has a country to run. It's time that we produce realistic budgets to the people, to Parliament, and to the Kingdom. And if I need time to do so, I will definitely do so. In the meantime, made sure that the CFT was informed of my plans, which I did while on a working visit to Curaçao. And in a discussion I had with Staatssecretaris Knops, I also informed him of such. So let's see how it goes, but December 15 is our and my deadline. Then there's another point I would like to address shortly. In walking through town and through the business community areas of St. Martin, the cry of the business community for support from our local banks is very high. And if you come across business people that are requesting 10, 15,000 US to stock up, to refurbish, or to do whatever with the business to make sure that it continues, it is very difficult to obtain those monies, even though they have collateral in the form of pieces of land. And I understand that land doesn't produce money, and that the banks say, yeah, but that's what it is. It is not sufficient for us. You know, that might be a banking policy. But on the other hand, banks should also realize, and I would like to exempt the good ones in between the ones that we have locally, but the bank should realize also that all of us, government, the citizens of St. Martin, we have a responsibility for the rebuilding of our nation. And we can continue sticking to certain rules and protocols This is a disaster zone still, and it requests exceptional measures to be taken. And I would call upon the banking community to really, pick up your responsibility and help us, the people, help us, the government, to come to solutions. Yes, the Ministry of Finance is busy looking at how we can help, especially the small and mid-sized businesses, but we need the help from everyone. We cannot just sit by and wait for the money to come to you. I mean, that is the exceptional position some of our banks have. We can finance cars, and yes, the Banking Association, when I was a parliamentarian, tried to explain to me why it is not possible. As long as we put people on the moon and send a spacecraft to Mars, anything should be possible. Anything should be possible to rebuild our country. You have a responsibility to carry, so please pick up, and I plead to the banks to really look into this seriously. I will continue monitoring the progress or non-progress, and I will continue to address it. Then I would like to inform the people of St. Maarten that we will receive the Honorable Ambassador of the United States to the Netherlands. He will be visiting St. Maarten, together with the Dutch Ambassador to the United States and the consul, the U.S. consul based in Curacao. I will be entertaining this visit as I will be deputizing for the Prime Minister who is of Ireland, and I think that the Deputy Prime Minister will inform you about that. There will be some topics that are going to be discussed, such as pre-clearance. I will be joined by my colleague from Economic Affairs, Mr. Johnson, as well. Issues like reciprocity in visa policies. So some topics that are necessary that we need to discuss with the United States. And that is it for now. No, last point. The central bank is an ongoing portfolio for me. We need to finalize the appointments. Discussions I had while I was in Curacao. The situation with the insurance company Enya is still on the agenda, and I'm looking to travel back to Curacao to discuss with my counterpart, Minister Gijs Berta, and the central bank, the latest status and the plan of action. And I thank you for that. Thank you for your attention, and I'm available to your questions.
Thank you, Minister Geerlings, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment and Infrastructure, the Honorable Miklos Gietersen, to address you. Minister Gietersen.
My briefing updates are as follows. It has come to my attention that unknown persons have been creating fake social media accounts under my name. Specifically on Instagram, there is a fake account called Honorable Miklos Gietersen with 2 T's. This is a fake account known for scamming. I learned that the OM office is carrying out an investigation on this account. I would please like to ask the public not to interact with this account and to please report it on Instagram. I would like to inform that the only social media account through which I will be interacting with the general public is on Facebook. The page, which will be monitored in close collaboration with my cabinet, is facebook.com/Miklos Gietersen with 1 T. Through this medium, I will highlight different activities and projects and attempt to, within limits, interact with the community. This may seem like a trivial topic to start giving my updates on. However, I take my reputation and the privilege of being your minister very seriously. I would never solicit or ask that personal details or information be sent via social media. It is a shame that the very same technology that brings so many Benefits can also be the same tool used to destroy a person's character. Moving on, last Thursday, I had the opportunity to escort steering committee members Mr. Marcel Gomes of St. Martin, Mr. Frans Wiekers of the Netherlands, and Mrs. Tasheen Said, World Bank Country Director of the Caribbean, and their delegations on a tour of the landfill. The delegation, along with a presentation from Mr. Claudius Moncamper, received a first-hand view of the landfill, the challenges that we experience, and the urgency that we all feel to work towards a sustainable solution in the shortest possible time. The landfill issue continues to be one of the highest priorities, and all hands are on deck, and will remain on deck until the best solution is found. Later on in the afternoon, I was also present along with Minister Lee, as the group was also given a presentation from the St. Martin Housing Development Foundation, as part of the funds have been allocated to performing emergency repairs to the public housing homes critically hit. Further to the repairs, medium and long-term plans are in process to address the housing shortage on St. Martin. We have also engaged the expertise of the World Bank to advise us on all these areas as well. The hurricane season cleanup campaign in different districts continues to take place on a weekly basis and in the coming days. Debris collection continues on July 18th to the 24th in the Phillipsburg area, July 21st, the Bush Road area, and July 22nd, the Fort William to Corralita Road area will be the targeted zones. The schedule can be found on the Facebook page and through the other government outlets. As always, I urge the public to make use of these opportunities to get rid of any garbage or loose debris that can very easily become projectiles or litter during a storm. For residents in vulnerable groups, especially the elderly or disabled, who may have trouble getting debris to the roadside to be picked up, I want to encourage you to reach out to your respective community councils who maintain close communication with the different haulers. They may be able to make arrangements for your debris to be picked up directly from your yard. While touching on hurricane season district cleanups, I would like to take a moment to remind the general community of their own personal obligation to help keep our island clean. We can have all the district cleanups that we want. We can have the very best garbage haulers cleaning the streets every night. But if we, as a community, don't take personal responsibility to not litter and to properly dispose of our trash, then all the work this ministry and other NGOs try to do will be in vain. I highly appreciate and commend the different service organizations throughout the community who continually hold cleanup campaigns on our beaches and in our communities. I know that Minister Johnson has recently participated in one of these cleanups, and I commend him. I am calling on all of us to take part in keeping our island clean, and it starts with taking a personal responsibility to not litter and to properly dispose of our garbage around our homes, streets, and places of business. Continuing, the fight against the invasion of the sargassum seaweed continues. The ministry is continually monitoring the influx of the seaweed, and right now we are busy in the Oyster Pond area trying to keep ahead of the invasion. The work is continuous and is a very real effect of climate change. We are also closely monitoring other areas on the island and making preparations to initiate other cleanups. From tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday, the old fire station building in the center of Phillipsburg is scheduled to be demolished. Work will start at 6 a.m. on Thursday and will continue into Friday. Along with the Minister of Economic Affairs, notice has been given to the vendors at the location to accommodate the necessary work that is being done. As mentioned by our Honorable Prime Minister last week, the Council of Ministers is currently exploring the best use of this and other abandoned public areas and buildings in the immediate vicinity. Lastly, on behalf of the Department of Inspection, I would like to give notice to the public that strict enforcement will be implemented with regards to compliance of the building ordinance and the conditions of issued building permits. In accordance with Article 7 of the building ordinance, it is prohibited to erect a building or partially renovate a building without complying with the conditions as stated in the building ordinance or the building decree. It is also prohibited to perform works without a building permit or contrary to the conditions of the issued building permit. Specifically, relevant conditions are that the building permit, including approved drawings, must be kept on the building site, that the building permit must be posted visibly on the building site, and that written notice must be given to the inspection department 48 hours before commencement of any critical phase of construction, such as pouring of concrete. Any transgression of Article 7 of the building ordinance will be punished with a fine of 500 guilders. Before issuing this fine, the inspection department of the ministry will inform the stakeholder by means of a warning letter about the illegal situation, and the stakeholder will be allowed to see to it that the illegal situation is righted. Additionally, it is within my authority to remove any illegal building construction or prevent any illegal building activity at the expense of the offender. I would like to send a stern warning to the community of St. Martin. This is an area in which the ministry and in which I, as minister, will take a firm stand. It is of utmost importance that persons respect the building laws, specifically for their own safety and the safety of others, and to the respect all laws of this country. I encourage all residents and businesses to take heed and save themselves unnecessary fines and delays by complying accordingly. This concludes my press briefing for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Heatherson, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, the Honorable Emma Lee, to address you. Minister Lee?
National health reform has been a priority for this ministry, and that work continues, and so I'd like to just update you on some of the different aspects of that. The goal for national health reform is to ensure that we provide affordable, quality health care close to home for all of St. Martin residents. And that's simply based on the fact, and it's, I think, one of UNDP development goals, the definition of universal health care, that basically access to quality health care is a human right, and we certainly subscribe to that. So there's many aspects in our healthcare system that we're working on in parallel, and so I thought it'd be good to update you on the status of those projects. I updated last week about the hospital, that we're working very hard to have the updated building permits ready, updated building plans, so engineering drawings ready to submit to ROMI for building permit. That's anticipated to be submitted in the first week of August, and we're hoping to actually finalize all of the process and actually break ground before the end of the year. We're very optimistic about the opportunity that World Bank is going to provide to finance part of the reinforcement of the existing medical center. So the construction for the new general hospital is scheduled to take about 3 to 4 years. And so obviously that means that the existing facility needs to be reinforced and able to provide the quality of services necessary during that construction period. And based on the damages received from Irma, there's a plan to reinforce the current building and also to upgrade some of the facilities within to ensure that we can offer the quality of care and that the building can withstand hurricanes until the new construction is finished. An important part of that funding from World Bank that we hope to have finalized within the next month or so is support for the JCI accreditation. The Joint Commission International is an international standard for healthcare institutions. This is a standard that both Aruba, Curaçao have subscribed to, so we're all working towards the same standards. And this is very much ensuring that the quality of care that's going to be provided by the current hospital and the new general hospital meet the highest of international standards, again, ensuring that we don't just build a building, but ensure that the quality of the services being provided are up to international standards. In addition, we're working on the prescription drug costs. This is an item that's been identified as a way to help to reduce our overall costs for healthcare in our community. The GVS committee has been officially approved. That's the Geneesmiddelenvergoeding system, or a pharmaceutical remuneration system. There's a number of members that have already been appointed. The LB has been approved, and the members are Peter Bruns, Lucien Vespel, Anduelis Illis, and Gabby Van Essen. So these are the members of the GVS committee, and their task is basically to look at the cost of prescription drugs and make recommendations then to the Minister of TIAT actually for implementation. We have already completed a price survey. So in other words, a company was hired, a company called Improven BV was hired to look at our prescription drug costs and to look at making recommendations in terms of what appropriate structure would be in place and what appropriate pricing should look like. We've had our cooperation agreements with Curaçao and Aruba, and we've had the opportunity to learn from their initiatives. I mean, we're actually the last one out of the Dutch Antilles, Dutch Caribbean islands, to actually look at implementing measures to bring down costs of prescription drugs. Aruba's gone through a method where they've looked at a voluntary approach. So in other words, they've come with recommended pricing and then asked the pharmacies to comply with that. That's showing to have some issues. In Curaçao, they adopted a system where previously the price of the drugs, they had their initial cost and then they added a markup, and then they changed that to the price of the drug and then a fee per line item in the prescription. So in other words, the drug price is fixed, and then the pharmacies make their money based on the lines, each line in the prescription. So they get a fixed fee for each line, which means as it stands, if you have a cost plus markup, actually businesses have an incentive to sell the most expensive drugs, because as the drugs are more expensive, the markup also becomes proportionately higher, and that means they make more money. Whereas if you pay a fee per line, the price of the drug doesn't factor into the fee that they're compensated with, so they don't have the incentive to sell the higher priced medications. So we've learned from what Aruba and Curaçao have done. We've learned from what worked and what didn't work. For example, in Curaçao, they looked at the top 200 drugs. In St. Martin, our focus is actually on the 50 most used drugs, because we believe that bulk of our costs are within those 50 medications, and that this is a practical approach. So very happy. They're scheduled to have their first meeting by the end of the month, and this, we hope, will help to bring down our cost for prescription drugs in our community. Additionally, we're working on prevention. We had a good meeting a couple weeks ago with the family physicians where we spoke to them about a number of topics, but including how can we ensure that we're focused on prevention, early detections, and screening, working with, for example, the Diabetes Foundation in terms of trying to bring a podiatrist to the island. As you know, for families who have diabetic family members, you need to make sure that you're wearing proper shoes and that you have proper foot care. We've seen far too many amputations in our community as a result of diabetes not being well managed, and in terms of the care that's been given to some of the patients, we believe that there's certainly a lot of room for improvement in that. We're looking at our referral process. In other words, currently SZV is managing the process of referring patients abroad for care that's not available locally. We're in discussions with the SMMC, so SZV and SMMC and the ministry are in discussions looking at how we can streamline our referral process, making it more efficient, and perhaps even doing it more directly under the SMMC structure, under some sort of a board that we can, again, make the whole process a little bit more transparent and a little bit more efficient. Also looking at the use of telemedicine and rotating physicians to help to reduce the number of referrals that we're sending abroad and try and bring that knowledge home through technology and through rotating physicians. So again, a number of things that we're looking at. Also the BIC legislation, this is legislation that governs how we approve specialists that are coming to the island. That's a process that we believe, again, could be streamlined and reviewed so that we can make bringing in quality physicians an easier process while still maintaining quality standards. Working closely with SNV to work on improving customer service, compliance within the community, efficiency, and also a big focus on e-health. You know, we certainly would like to incorporate technology as we go forward, trying to make things a little bit more customer service friendly, more efficient, and also better access to data so that we can use that data to make decisions as we're going forward in terms of how we're managing our healthcare costs. As I touched on briefly already, Aruba, Curacao, the Bess Islands, and St. Martin, we have our cooperation agreement. As a matter of fact, we're scheduled to have a conference I think in August or September. We're looking at our disaster preparedness and how between the different islands we can cooperate with each other in terms of when it comes time for disasters, how we can support each other. And of course, NHI. NHI is part of our national healthcare reform. And so all of these are happening in parallel. The advice, the NHI legislation is currently at the SARE. We've made a presentation to them because one of the things that I found, and no insult to lawyers, but reading legislation is maybe not the most thrilling or exciting task. And I think that sometimes we take for granted that they understand our healthcare system and understand how legislation fits in the bigger picture. And so we're taking a very different approach where we're trying to paint this overall holistic picture of what we're trying to do with our healthcare reform, or NHR, and then how NHI fits into that context. And NHI really is about, you know, how do we finance our healthcare system? How do we make sure that it's equitable? How do we make sure that people now who currently have a problem accessing affordable quality healthcare, how they have access to that, and how we can manage our healthcare costs? And so all of those are things that are within our NHI legislation. And so we're beginning to, our consultation rounds also met yesterday with the Council of Advice, giving them a brief introduction into it. The ministry is working on an improved PowerPoint presentation. Based on the questions we receive, we see that there's really a lot of questions coming from left field, right field about healthcare in general, which really shows us that we need to do a better job in terms of explaining what we're doing with national health reform and also NHI and how it fits in that context. So a lot of things happening in terms of our healthcare. I'd like to touch briefly on labor. As you know, we have our registration for our technical and vocational courses. This is in conjunction with MIC-IT and NEPA. These are the masonry, plumbing, carpentry, electrical installation, welding, general property maintenance courses. And so far, we have 52 people who have registered and showed interest in participating. So the ministry is continuing with our training exercises, educational support for people who are interested in working in the reconstruction economy. You know, one of the interesting points yesterday in our conversation with Council of Advice is they said, Minister, we've heard that the ministry has given permission for 3,000 foreign workers to come to the island for construction. And that is absolutely not true. So far, actually, in terms of the expedited work permit process, we've given 62 permits. This is for the project for Maho. The 62 permits were given to Chinese nationals. Maho has 78 local employees through either directly or through their subcontractors, so they have more local workers than they've imported. But clearly, because of the product they're importing, the skill sets that they need, they tried to hire those people locally. They were not available. And so in order to make sure that the rebuilding process happens timely, those permits were granted. And also, I remind the public that it's based on they have to pay their taxes, pay their social premiums. Housing needed to be provided for them. So, and the permits are non-renewable. In other words, once the project is finished, they're going to return to their country of origin. So, we believe that we've made sure that these individuals are here simply for a project and for the rebuilding process, and are not going to be, let's say, a long-term integrated into our workforce. So we believe that this is a win-win. As a matter of fact, we've not received any other bulk project requests. So this idea that there's thousands of permits being given is absolutely not true. As a matter of fact, my concern is more that we haven't received more requests. To me, it's actually an indication that our rebuilding process is going slowly, because we know from the Labor Department that there are not large numbers of unemployed construction workers. Everyone in construction that we've met is working, or those who are interested but don't have the skill sets we're offering the training courses for. And so what it reflects actually is either there's a large number of illegal workers on the island who are not registered, not paying their social premiums. Again, this is something that the ministry takes seriously, and we're ramping up our compliance measures soon. So I'd like the community to be aware. If you have workers who are undocumented, who are working, you need to get them documented. There's no reason for it. There's an expedited process. You don't have to do the advertising for construction workers. You don't have to wait the 5 weeks. So we have an expedited process. So there's no excuse that you're not applying for work permits. As a matter of fact, just last week, we had an incident where we had to emergency evacuate a worker off of the island who was hired by a homeowner, apparently, so not via a company. Person fell off a roof, and then we are stuck with the bills for the air evacuation and the medical costs. And this is something that the country simply cannot afford, and there's no reason for it, right? All of these people should be working through a company, should be properly documented, paying their taxes, and paying their social premiums. So actually, again, to reiterate, my concern is a little bit more that we haven't seen more requests, because we know that for the reconstruction projects that St. Martin needs to see moving, that we need to import workers to complete them in a timely manner. Otherwise, we're going to see our economy stagnate as the rebuilding process stagnates. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Lee, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, the Honorable Wycliffe Smith, to address you.
Today, July 18th, marks the centenary of the birth of a great man, Nelson Mandela. His life and his work are admired and appreciated by all. He once said, "Sometimes it falls upon a generation to be great, and you can be that great generation," unquote. And I believe that applies to this generation now at this time in St. Martin, where we can make St. Martin great again. As Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, I've been busy getting to know the ministry, which is the largest ministry in terms of finances. It takes up approximately 1/3 of the country's budget, 128 million guilders. And in terms of staff, the ministry employs close to 500 persons. 290 work in the Ministry of Education, and 207 work in public education, which include school managers, teachers, care workers, and administrators. Besides spending time talking to the 4 departments within the ministry, as well as the 6 divisions that fall under this huge ministry, I also attended many graduations and was pleased to be able to hand over certificates and diplomas and awards to so many well-deserving students. Talking about awards, the Department of Education will be organizing once again this year an award ceremony for students who excelled in the foundation-based examinations, or the FBE exams as we call them. These exams determine which type of secondary school our students will be admitted to. One student who thought that we were not going to hold the award ceremony even sent me a personal email and I'd like to read an excerpt from this email. It reads, and this is part of the email: "Thanks to my teachers and my parents who motivated me and got me back on track after the hurricane, I scored 94% and was announced the valedictorian of my school. Each year, I see the results in the newspaper where the Ministry of Education honors all top students, which motivated me to study harder and to aim to get my certificate. But till today, I don't know who topped the island and who scored the highest in each subject." This student went on to say that he hopes it is not too late to award top students for their achievements, which, he says, can motivate more students in the coming year to do their best. Just want to assure this student and all the other students who worked hard during the school year 2017-2018 and who excelled in their class or in their school or in a particular subject that they will receive an award and they will be recognized during the first week in this new school year. With regard to the youth department, I just want to say that the BOP program, the Business Outreach and Placement Program, that allowed some 80 students this year to gain work experience on the job, it's in its second week. And these youngsters have adapted well to their work environment and they're coping quite well. As far as culture is concerned, our culture department had a meeting with its counterpart on the French side in which they discussed ways and means of cooperating. I think that this is exciting. And I myself also met briefly with the vice president, who's in charge of culture on the northern part of the island. And we agreed to come together very soon to solidify the various ways of working together to promote our joint cultural heritage. And just a brief item from public education. In one of my meetings with the staff of the Division Educational Innovations, I was pleasantly surprised when one of the members of the iStep project said at the beginning of her presentation, "Minister, you said you want to lift the image of our public schools. Well, this project, the iStep project, will do just that." And so what is the iStep project? The iStep project is the ICT in Education project aimed at integrating education, at integrating ICT, that is computers and all that go with it, in education. And this project will transform the traditional classroom setting of the public school to a modern digital learning environment that promotes 21st century skills. There will be several pilot schools where the teachers will be using iPads and other technology to teach our children, and the children also will be using this type of technology, iPads and so on, to learn and to practice their skills. Teachers in the project have been trained in, and because the delay that we experienced due to Hurricane Irma, this project now will roll out in several public schools later this year. I will be leaving this afternoon to travel to Barranquilla, Colombia, to attend the opening of the Central American and Caribbean Games, which takes place tomorrow. I'm very excited and elated that St. Martin, for the first time, is taking part in this very prestigious sports event. The Central American and Caribbean Games are a multi-sport regional championship event held once every 4 years, typically in the middle year between the Summer Olympics. And through these games, athletes can eventually qualify to participate in the Olympic Games. St. Martin's participation in these games is very important, and I'm hoping that some of our athletes will qualify to go on to eventually take part in the Summer Olympic Games 2 years from now. I'd like to encourage all athletes on the island to take their sport seriously, to be disciplined. One of the complaints that I hear from trainers is that our athletes take their talent for granted and they do not push and practice and give it their all. But to make it to the top in your sport, you've got to take it serious and be very disciplined. Well-known Usain Bolt, 8-time Olympic gold medalist, said, "Easy is not an option. There are no off days, so never quit." Unfortunately, I won't be able to stay and watch our St. Martin athletes compete because I have to leave Barranquilla to fly to Cochabamba in Bolivia, where I was invited by the UNESCO to attend the regional meeting of education ministers from Latin America and the Caribbean. These meetings will take place from July 25th through July 27th, but since UNESCO booked and paid for the ticket, the way flights are arranged is that I will have to fly back to St. Martin, and on the same day, that's the 21st, fly on to Bolivia. The purpose of the UNESCO meetings is to discuss with colleague ministers the 2030 education agenda set forth by UNESCO, as well as to discuss strategies concerning the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals that were proclaimed by UNESCO in 2015. To me, a very important aspect of this meeting is also to be able to establish contacts and to network with my colleagues from the Caribbean region. Also attending the technical sessions of the UNESCO meetings will be the head of the Department of Education, Mrs. Sidonia Lacorbiniere Hodge. And so that's it for now. Thank you, and I'm available to entertain any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Minister Smith, for your opening remarks. If you've just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing. We now go over to the question and answer session. Stephen Cerulean of PJ82 Radio, you have the floor.
What about the availability of teachers? Are you up to par with teachers for the new school year 2018-2019?
Mr. Stephen, we have practically, as far as the public schools are concerned, all the teachers in place. I haven't heard anything from the private school boards, so I'm assuming that they're also pretty much set as far as their teachers are concerned. But before the school year begins, when I return from these trips, I will be touching base with public schools as well as the public education division to see how we're doing in that respect. There are in our system a number of teachers who are teaching but not yet fully qualified, and at this moment the Department of Education is developing a program that will help to accelerate them in order to get their teaching certificate that will qualify them to teach.
Thank you, Minister Smith. Lyndon Brown of BCN TV, you have the floor.
Good morning to the people of St. Martin and the hard-working ministers. Congratulations. To Minister Stuart Johnson, there's still an ongoing saga with the airport. You told us the last time that there should be a mutual understanding, but according to the news, the prosecutor gave the airport 1 more week to come to some agreement. Is there progress? Are you looking at the bright side?
Well, of course, thank you, Lyndon, for your question. And I know you're very passionate about the airport as much as I am. So at every press briefing, I would continue to love to talk about the airport. But in particular, where it concerns the verdict of the judge being rendered on July 30th, we're waiting on that. Again, I remain very hopeful that a positive outcome can come at the end of the day. It is a win-win that has to come for the country. And again, the need to have a fully functional operational airport with U.S. pre-clearance in the near future is, of course, of paramount importance for the Ministry of TIAT.
Thank you, Minister Johnson. Alita Singh of the Daily Herald, you have the floor.
Thank you, Relika. Good morning, ministers. Minister Johnson, your first comment this morning was about the Hurricane Preparation Forum. What do you then intend to do, or how do you intend to reallocate that 50,000 guilders, seeing that you mentioned that there's a lot to be done in the community?
Thank you, of course, Alita, for your question. And of course, for me, when I look at the issue involving how the forum would have come together, I could not see taxpayers' money being spent on that. And I think when we look at what other areas we can focus the money for in terms of TIAT, there is, of course, the tourism awareness campaign that I want to launch with my colleague on the French side, Ms. Valérie Damascure. And of course, we can continue to see projects of that nature which goes back into the community and fosters further development within our tourism product. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Johnson. Stephen Cerillion.
Minister of Finance, you said that you're looking forward to presenting a realistic budget in 2019. You also stated that you need more time to do so. How much more time do you need?
Thank you, Steve, for that question. As I mentioned in my statement, that December 15th remains the deadline as agreed between the Kingdom parties. So December 15th is the deadline. So at that time, I'm aiming to have that budget ready.
Thank you, Minister Heerlings. Lyndon Brown, BCN TV.
Minister Lee. Good morning again. Minister Lee, you was emphasizing on the workforce in construction, and according to what you said, people are not signing up. There's a scare, Minister Lee, on the island. There are people who live here and do not have legal status, but they are working in construction. They are fearful to come forward. Do they have anything to fear? Because of course they are working, they are employed as we speak. Can you clear the air? Let them know what is a possibility for them to be legalized.
Thanks, Lyndon. Again, maybe just to make sure that we're clear. What I've said is that we have not seen large numbers of applications coming into the ministry, which is concerning to me, because it means one of two possibilities, or a combination of the two, that the reconstruction process is happening very slowly, right? In other words, that the process is so slow that there's no need for additional workers, or that there's a large number of undocumented workers, which is what you're referring to. And I believe, personally, I believe that compliance with the law needs to be the path of least resistance. One of the mechanisms that we have is for these people to get work permits, especially for the project base, so that they can get into the system. And I believe that in the end, it's the employers who are responsible to ensure the companies ensure that they give the proper documentation, that they arrange for the proper documentation. Let me say this, that one of the things as a minister that I'm looking at, I mean, we have these incidents periodically where undocumented, uninsured workers are injured and need to be evacuated, and the financial cost becomes the responsibility for government. We are looking into the possibility that if we find that this happens when a company has an employee without proper documentation, without having insured them, keep in mind, these undocumented workers can still register at the tax office, can still register at SZV. Whether we like it or not, that's the law. The law is that they can still purchase, they can still pay their social premiums and pay their taxes, right? If we find, I'm looking into the possibility that if one of these people are injured while in employment, holding the employer responsible for all of the medical costs. These are things that I don't believe any employer wants to do. And if we have the possibility to do it, it is something that I'm going to look at as a minister, of holding one of these employers responsible for those medical costs.
Thank you, Minister Lee. Alita Singh.
Thanks again, Rolika. Finance Minister, on the situation at the cadastre, the notaries, of course, have been very vocal about it. The Chamber of Commerce registration does not reflect the number of board members. Have you looked into this matter? What is happening with the board members, and what is the current situation now, as of Monday, when there should have been a temporary solution? What is the situation now there?
Thank you, Alita. The situation is multiple-fold. First of all, there was an issue with the registration of deeds. Then there is an issue with having a director. Then there is an issue having an issue, yes, with the registrar, mortgage registrar. And then we have an incomplete board. So we have an issue. However, when I was approached by the supervisory board, I must say that within 1-2 days we came up with a plan of approach how to tackle the issues brought forward, especially by the notaries. A short-term solution is being put in place and communicated with the notaries. The notaries had indicated a deadline, and if the deadline was not met, then they would look at other ways of proceeding in this matter. We, at least the supervisory board, managed to put forward to the notaries a plan of action, I think 8 or 9 points. Those points were acceptable to the notaries for the short term. The notaries also extended their willingness to assist the cadastre at this point in time where needed. But in the meantime, the supervisory board is diligently looking at replacing the interim director and have an addition on the board that's being worked on as we speak, and that will make the board fully operational where the board members is concerned. Having some experience at the cadastre in terms of being the chairman there for 7 years of the supervisory board, I assisted them with some advice, and I'm very hopeful and very positive that we're moving into the right direction. So far, so good, and I'm keep on monitoring. I can also inform you that on a daily basis I'm in touch with the supervisory board. I propose to have a meeting also for my elucidation, that we set up a meeting very shortly between the cadastre board, the management that's shortly put in place to be able to register all the deeds, and the notary, so that I'm sure as a minister that everybody is on the same page.
Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, July 18th, 2018. For rebroadcast, tune in every evening at 7 p.m. on St. Martin Cable TV. For video on demand, log on to the official government's website at www.stmartingov.org. On behalf of the Department of Communication, I'm Rolika Roach, and do have a pleasant day further.